Short notice matchup being put together this week for UFC Vegas 115, and it features the return of Kamaka III, who's coming in at minus 150, as he takes on UFC newcomer Dakota Hope, who comes in at plus 130. Let's start off on the Kamaka side of things, who went 1-2-1 through his run with the UFC back in 2020 and 2021. He was then cut after a draw to Danny Chavez, and then went over to Bellator, where he went 4-1 with that promotion, with his only loss coming, I believe, to Justin Gonzalez or Jason Gonzalez, one of those two names, by split decision. Close loss there for Kamaka. Then he joined PFL during the merger with Bellator, and he went 2-1 with that promotion, with his only loss coming by split decision to Brendan Loughnane. He then went to Tough Enough, which is a promotion over there in Vegas. We know he trains at Extreme Couture. He makes his home in Vegas, so fighting for Tough Enough was a no-brainer for him, especially considering it's one of the premier promotions on Fight Pass. He ended up going 3-1 with that promotion, with his only loss coming in a title fight, and it was a split decision loss to former UFC fighter Diego Brandao. That was a very close fight that could have gone either way, both guys having big moments, but it seemed that Brandao was able to convince two of the three judges that he deserved to win that fight. Luckily, Kamaka was able to bounce back in January, where he was able to get a third-round knockout over a 19-7 veteran, showcasing the usual striking style that we've come to know from Kamaka. Now, Kamaka's not been much of a finisher throughout his career. He only had one submission win going into his UFC run, and then he was able to pick up another finish over Kevin Bohm in Bellator. And now he's had 2 out of 3 wins come by finish during this run with Tough Enough, and it showcases that he's trying to be a little bit more aggressive, but I don't think he has crazy knockout power by any means. He's well-rounded enough, but I'd say his strength is his striking, where he puts together decent combinations. He doesn't put forward a high-activity game. He more so just looks for opportunistic moments where he can put combinations together and try to inflict damage on his opponents, and if he feels he has enough of a grappling advantage over his opponents, that's where we start to see him take them down and try to smash them from that top position, just as he did in his first Tough Enough appearance. I was kind of surprised to see him return to the UFC. According to his manager, it was a tough time to get him back in the UFC. I don't know if we'll ever hear the full story behind that, but he seems to be a fighter at the level of, just being a middling fighter, taking a little bit of inspiration from his Hawaiian brother, Brad Tavares, a guy that's probably never going to get into title contention, but is still good enough to compete against the middle of the division and just keep himself from getting cut. So there must have been something going on behind the scenes as to why he got released from them in the first place. But here he finds himself returning against Dakota Hope. And you would expect him to get signed either to the Contender Series or the UFC, especially after the nasty finish he had in his last fight, which was actually in front of the UFC matchmakers, I believe, as that fight took place a day or two before UFC Houston back in February. Hope was then scheduled to fight for a Fury FC title against former Contender Series alum Carlos Calderon, but he now gets this short notice opportunity to jump into the UFC and achieve his dreams. Now, I've been following this guy since about June, as when he made his LFA debut and pretty much ran through his opponent, who was a tough, durable, and experienced veteran. He was able to control him for the majority of 15 minutes and win that fight on the scorecards. Then it seemed like Hope, he seemed to be a nomad in terms of his training. He was over in Asia, had a couple fights over there, started training in Montreal as well. But it seemed like about around 2019, 2020, he was in Houston, and he was a part of the 4 Ounce Fight Club, which is a team he decided to rejoin, which is why he started fighting for Fury FC in his last 2 matchups. And obviously, going along the ride of Joshua Van, Michael Aswell, and Alden Correa, it made sense for him to go back to that team, fight for Fury FC, and now here he finds himself at the top platform in the sport. Normally, he goes out there, looks to drag his opponents to the ground. He's very strong. He has a smothering approach. Even if he doesn't get his opponents to the ground, he does a great job in terms of containing them against the cage while landing damage, so referees don't really force a split up of that action. His cardio has definitely gotten better from earlier in his career, and that's where his lone defeat came from, is when he had a very strong 2 first rounds, and then in the last 3 rounds of a championship fight, his opponent was able to stop the takedowns and outpoint him, but that's been a while ago now, and he's done a great job in terms of improving his game all around and improving his cardio. His hands have obviously improved as well, but we did see him get in trouble in his second last matchup against Damian Nelson, where he got hurt in the second round, but luckily his strength and his grappling allowed him to recover, and he was able to get his wits back about him and then bounce back in that third round to still secure the decision victory after all the success he had in round 1 as well. I like his improvements in the striking game. He needs to just sharpen it up a little bit, but obviously his smothering grappling and a nasty ground and pound will make him very successful at this level. Now, there's a big strength of schedule advantage for Kai Kamaka. Big time experience advantage over Dakota Hope, but I believe Hope has the capabilities to go out there and spring the upset. Kamaka will have a bit of a technical striking advantage, but I think the lack of threat in his knockout power will allow Hope to stay in the driver's seat for most of this matchup, whether that's containing Kamaka against the cage by cage pushing and looking for takedowns, or just threatening with a lot of power punches. I think he can just keep the pressure on Kamaka here and really make this fight look good in his favor, especially when it ends up hitting the scorecards. Kamaka could be able to counter that aggression with his slicker striking approach, but if his power doesn't translate as it often hasn't, I don't see where Hope ends up having trouble here. It's possible Kamaka can just time a perfect counter and hurt Hope that way and really swing the momentum back in his favor, but I really believe that this will be a tough fight for Kamaka to overcome the pressure of Hope, and I think we'll see Hope continuously land takedowns, get mat returns, landing big damage from on top, and then once this fight hits the scorecards, I expect Dakota Hope to get his hand raised here. So give me Hope by decision, and it should be an upset in the first fight of the night for Dakota Hope.